بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. عرض سلام و احترام دارم خدمت شما محصلین عزیز و گرامی. امیدوارم حال همه شما خوب باشد. صبح همگی شما بخیر. Our today's session starts with classification of speech sounds on the basis of whether the particular sounds are vocoid and contoid. And moreover, there are two other parameters based on which we are also classifying speech sounds, which are fortis and lenis. So, in pursuit of our previous session, that we were classifying speech sounds on the basis of whether the particular sounds we are talking about are vowels or consonants. So today we are going for two other criterias, which are vocoid and contoid, and moreover, lenis and fortis. So the content of our today's session includes vocoid and contoid, fortis and lenis. So totally we have two pairs of parameters based on which we are classifying or categorizing a speech sound, vocoid and contoid, and also fortis and lenis. Uh, Before going through contoid and vocoid and moreover fortis and lenis, it is really essential to look back into what we discussed last time. Particularly, we talked about the distinction between vowels and consonants from the perspective of phonetics. We said that vowels are particularly those speech sounds or human sounds. While we are producing them, there is no obstruction of the air in the, for example, a vocal tract. So it could be in the mouth, or it could be somewhere in the glottis, or anywhere in our vocal tract. So generally, we specified vowels and we identified vowels and say that if we are producing particular sounds in a way that there is no constriction or there is no structure in the airflow, that particular sound is called vowels or vowel. And also, we identified consonants, and we say that consonants are remarkable for creating construction in the vocal tract. Right. So that or these were the characteristics, were the definition that we already talked about them. But um, if we look into the real characteristics and traits that we have defined for vowels, I think still we notice that there are some consonants that phonetically they carries or they carry or they possess some of the properties of vowels, but functionally or phonologically they are not functioning as vowels. And moreover, we have also some consonants that phonetically they do not have the characteristics of vowel, but functionally they are functioning as vowels. So here we are facing a kind of terminological confusion. So whether such distinction that we are looking at as vowels and consonants, is it really a kind of phonetic perspective or phonological perspective? Or are we looking at sounds, we're categorizing sounds based on their physical properties, I mean phonetic properties, or functional properties, which I mean phonological properties. So for that, as I already told you, generally we said a vowel is any sound with no audible noise produced by no construction in the vocal tract. Yes, we say that when we're producing vowel sounds, there is not any, for example, abstraction of the air somewhere in our mouth. So when there is no abstraction, where there is not any constriction, so particularly in the flow of the air, so basically there is not audible noise. Exactly. And moreover, we say a consonant is a sound with audible noise produced by a construction. So we said when we are producing a particular consonant sound, so during the production of that sound, we create an abstraction somewhere in our vocal tract. As a result, we create what we bring about a kind of audible noise. So any sound produced in that way is considered consonant. Um, Now, vowel and consonant classification problem. So I have put a question mark. Exactly, there is a question mark. What there is a problem. So what is the problem? If you remember last time, we looked at semi-vowels and we said that semi-vowels are those sounds that they are produced with open approximation. Means that when we are producing wa in ya, there is not remarkable abstraction or constriction in the airflow. So if we look at the phonetic or physical property of wa in ya, they are exactly pronounced physically or phonetically as consonants. But if we look at their functions, they cannot function as vowels. If you remember long back, we discussed vowels and we said that one of the jobs of vowels are that they are used as the nucleuses of the syllables. So vowels are there to create syllable. However, if we look at the function of wa in ya, which I mean w in y, they are basically used at the two margins, either as the onset of a syllable or sometimes as the coda of syllables. They never function as the nucleus of the or nuclei of the syllables. So for that we can say basically wa and ya with which they are produced with having open approximation are physically produced the same as consonants. Sorry, vowels are produced. However, the way that they are functioning is the way that consonants are functioning. And moreover, we have also some other consonants that actually they are pronounced physically or phonetically the way other consonants are produced. I mean that when we are producing them, so we create kind of obstruction or blockage in the airflow. However, if you look at their function, they are functioning as vowels, that they are called syllabic consonant. So those are syllabic consonants. They are used to basically work as the nuclei for some syllables. In some cases, na and la. In some cases, ra is also functioning as vowels. So they are creating or they are functioning to create the nuclei of the syllables. So we will see down here. So there is a kind of terminological problem in the sense that we have to make it clear when we say vowel and consonant. So do we look at the properties only from the perspective of phonetics or from the perspective of phonology as well? Or simply do we look at how they are produced rather than, for example, what they do in a syllable? It should be clear to us. Now, for that reason, we say that there is a kind of terminological problem. So, if I am asking you, so what is vowel? Then simply you ask me that, okay, what do you mean by vowel? Do you want me to give you information about the physical property of vowels, how they're produced? Or you, for example, mean where you are expecting me to give me some information about the function of, for example, vowels. And moreover, if I'm asking you consonant again, so you might have two views, or from two perspectives, you can talk about consonants. So the way that they are physically produced, or the way they are articulated, or the way that they are used in order to, for example, form part of syllables for example, in a word. So we should be clear before giving a particular definition. I mean, we can actually resolve that terminological problem to be more specific whether we mean those phonetic properties or those functional properties. So here, as I already told you, many consonant sounds can be identified as vowels in speech, depending on what. So even they are carrying the properties of consonants based on the way they are produced or based on the way that they are functioning in the construction of syllables. For example, in the English word yes, the initial ya is phonetically a vowel, right? So phonetically means that the way ya is produced. So how vowels are articulated? We say that vowels are articulated in a way in which in which we are not creating any abstraction of the air somewhere in our vocal tract. So when we are saying yeah, there is not any construction. Yeah produced while the air is coming out freely. So if we compare the physical or the phonetic property of yeah with some other vowels, so there is not any difference between the properties, I mean phonetic property of yeah and other vowels. And moreover, if we look down here in the phonological system of English, however, ya is in typical consonant position. Yes, phonetically it carries the property of vowels, but functionally it carries the property of vowels because, sorry, phonetically it carries the property of vowels because it is produced without any construction. So, however, functionally, yeah is working or is doing the job of consonants because it is used either as onset or coda. For example, we have the word yes. Next, similarly, there are sounds that are phonetically consonants, which under some circumstances do act as syllable nuclei, right? So the typical examples would be the use of syllabic la. So this la in English little, we do understand that the word little actually has two syllables. So the first one is le, and this is the pronunciation le, which is le, and then tl. So here tell, we do not have any other vowel here in the pronunciation system of the word little. So la is used as a syllabic sound here, or la is partially carrying the property of a vowel because it is used as the nucleus for the construction of the second syllable le, and then tal. Here tal, we do not have any other vowel, so la is carrying the property of a vowel, not really a vowel but the property of syllabic sound. So what I mean here, la, basically when we are producing la, we create an obstruction of the air somewhere in the central part of our mouth, so the air is coming out from the two sides. Now the phonetic property of la is the same as the phonetic property of other consonants. However, if we look at the function of la in this word, la is used as a syllabic sound, or we can say la is actually performing or doing the job of a vowel sound here because it is functioning or it is working as a syllabic sound, or it is used to form or shape, for example, the second syllable in this word, which is letter. So, in moreover, if we look at na phonetically is pronounced the way as other consonants are pronounced or produced. So when we're producing na, basically we create an abstraction of air somewhere in our mouth. However, if we look at the function of na, na is functioning as a vowel here. So phonetically it's produced as consonants. However, it is functioning as a vowel here because if we look at the word baton, so we have a word of two syllables. Ba. So here we have a vowel here which is and then tn. We do not have any other vowel here. Then na is functioning as a vowel here. It helps the second syllable in order to be shaped or in order to be formed here. Then na is a syllabic consonant. Means that the way we are producing, it belongs to the category of consonants, but the way it works, it belongs to the function or is similar to the function of vowels. And moreover, in some cases, ra, also we say that when we are producing ra, so our tongue is intermittently touching the roof of our mouth. So this is, for example, a kind of sound which relates or which is very close to the production of consonants. However, if we look at the word letter, so letter here we have a schwa basically. In most cases, schwa is not pronounced. This is letter. So this letter, L-E, this is a vowel here. So this is the first syllable and then tear. So this ra is basically functioning as a syllabic sound, and it actually helps that T both together to create, for example, the second syllable of the word letter. So what I was trying to tell you here, we had certain consonant sounds that they actually carried the property of vowels, but they were functioning as consonants. For example, ya and wa, they were pronounced in a way without any construction in the, for example, airflow. However, they were functioning as consonants. And moreover here we had la, na, and ra. they are pronounced the way as other consonants are pronounced. It means that when we are producing them, so the flow of the air is abstracted somewhere in the mouth. But if we look at their function, so their function is similar to the function of vowels because they are forming the, for example, nucleus of the syllables, specifically the second syllables. So that actually gives us a kind of clue to whether look at particular sounds from which view, whether we are looking at sounds through the perspective or viewpoints of phonetics or phonology, which I mean is the perspective of phonological properties or, for example, physical properties. So this is very important. So now what is the solution for such terminological confusion or problem? So that is a question mark. So we are thinking about that. Now for that. The solution to the terminological problem is first, we have to distinguish the sounds based on two criteria. One criteria should be strictly phonetic. Okay, we're looking at particular sounds from the viewpoint where, for example, perspectives of phonetics or physical property. And second, or either we are looking at sounds through the functions or through the tasks or jobs they do, for example, in a word. So we should be very specific. So here the author says the other based on the function or phonological criteria. So the first one is phonetic criteria and the second one is phonological criteria. So it is very important. As I already told you, for example, when I'm asking you, what is the difference between a consonant and a vowel? Then simply you're saying, okay, in terms of function or in terms of physical property. Now I'm saying in terms of physical property. Then you're telling me that okay, when we are producing or pronouncing consonants, we are producing them or pronouncing them or articulating them in a way that we notice we do not notice any constriction in the airflow. It means that no audible, for example, friction or noise is created. However, when we are producing consonants, so it is quite vice versa. So the air is blocked somewhere in our mouth, so audible noise is heard. So that is based on, for example, their phonetic properties. So in terms of function, particularly, you are talking about the exact jobs that consonants and vowels are doing and the formation of syllables in particular words. So for that, now the author particularly is talking from Pike, who is a very famous phonetician and phonologian and a person, phonologist that he has worked in the area of linguistics. So he is, where Pike is proposing two terminologies which are vocoid and contoid. He says that the entire sounds that we have, they are either vocoid or contoid. Now, what does he really mean by vocoid? So here he says a vocoid sound is defined as central, oral, resonant, or sonorant. Now see, central sounds, if you remember, we had central sounds or those sounds that they are produced or pronounced in the central part of our mouth. For example, la is not a central sound, right? Because the air is coming out from the two sides of our tongue. And then oral sounds. So na and ma, they are not included in oral sounds because when we are producing ma and na, the air is coming out through our nostrils. So they are nasal sounds. And then resonant or sonorant. So pa, ta, they are not sonorant because they are obstruent. So it means that sonorant sounds are those while we are producing them, so they do not have any constriction or they do not create any constriction. So any sound which is central means that which is not lateral. For example, la is not included here. Oral, which means that all those sounds which are oral, they are not nasal. And then sonorants means that those sounds that they are, for example, not obstruent. So they can be called vocoid. Any sounds that they are central means that they are not lateral. And then oral, which means they are not nasal. And sonorant, which means that they are not obstruent. They are called vocoid sounds. Next, when we say central, it is modified, disturbed in the central part of the mouth, not lateral. That is what I told you. So the air is modified somewhere, were manipulated, was changed somewhere, I mean the direction of the air, and distributed specifically in the central part of the mouth. And second, oral. because the air passes through the oral cavity, not nasal. So any nasal sound that we, for example, know, they cannot be included in the category of vocoids. So it excludes basically nasal sounds, and then resonant or sonorant, because there is no occlusion, or there is not, for example, constriction or blockage of the air somewhere in the vocal tract. So any sounds carrying these three properties, right, that they are central, oral, and sonorant, they can be considered as vocoid sounds. And now, so all vocoids are oral, central, and sonorant, voiced without constriction. So sonorants are all basically voiced, and they do not have any blockage of the air or constriction in the vocal fold. And moreover, vowels and glides. So generally, voiced sounds without constriction, vowels plus glides, these are all vocoid sounds. But however, this definition that I have given, for example, central, oral, sonorant, these are all basically phonetic properties. Now, what are, because we already proposed and we already so identified the criteria, and we actually reached an agreement. When we're looking at sounds, we have to actually make sure that whether this wheel through which we are looking at sounds is phonetic or phonological. So now, this perspective, oral, sonorant, and central, this is actually a phonetic or physical perspective. Now, let's look at the realistic or real functions that basically vocoid sounds are doing in the construction of syllables. So we can say vocoid sounds could be both syllabic or non-syllabic. It means that they may take part, for example, to work or function as the nuclei of the syllables, or they may not, for example, take part as the nuclei of the syllables. In that case, they could be non-syllabic. So here, exactly, if we consider, vowels are basically syllabic because they are used as the nuclei of syllables. And then here we have glides, wa and ya. Still, we can say they are oral, they are sonorant, and they are also central. But if we look at the function that they do in the construction of syllables, so they function as consonant. It means that they are basically non-syllabic. They cannot be used as the nuclei of the syllabus. So now coming to contoid. Everything which is not a vocoid is a contoid, right? So we have categorized and we said any sound which is central, sonorant, and then so another property. So these three properties, if particular sounds actually lack these three properties, we can say they are called contoid. Thus, ya is a vocoid, exactly, because this is a central. E is a vocoid, exactly. A is a vocoid. Wa is a vocoid, but la is not, exactly. La is not a vocoid. La is a contoid, right? Because this is not central. La is lateral, right? It is a contoid, as are pa and ba. Pa and ba are contoid. Why? Pa and ba are contoid because pa and ba are not sonorant. Pa and ba are obstruents, right? So obstruent sounds are basically not vocoid. These are contoids, right? But again, contoid sounds are also divided into syllabic or non-syllabic, or we can say some of actually contoid sounds could be syllabic. La, in terms of, for example, phonetic property, if we look at la, la is produced the same way as other consonants are produced. For example, when we're producing them, so they create a kind of abstraction of air in the vocal tract or in the mouth. So the same applies to the letter la while we are producing. However, if we look at the function of la, la is functioning the same as the vowels are doing. For example, we had the word little, so T plus L actually both worked. So basically, la was working as or functioning as the nucleus, what we can say as the syllabic, for example, sound that helped in the construction of a new syllable, which is the second syllable. So la is okay, but la is not. It is a contoid. Why la is contoid? Because it is not central. And also pa and ba, they are also contoid. They are not vocoid because these two are not sonorant. So now contoid includes nasals. Yes, nasals are not oral, right? And then laterals because laterals are not central. And there are varieties in other obstruents. So for obstruents we had so all those plosives, affricates, and fricatives, right? And then some varieties of right, specifically that intermittent right, they are considered or categorized as contoid sounds. So now let's have a look at this diagram closely. Vocoid and contoid, phonetic and phonological views. So if we are including vocoid and contoid terminologies, vocoid and contoid actually answer or look at sounds through two perspectives, both phonetic and phonological perspectives. Look down here. We can say sounds are initially divided into vocoid and also into contoid. So when we are coming to vocoid, vocoid basically includes vowels and glides. So here contoid, laterals, nasals, R varieties, and abstovans. Down again, vocoid and so generally vocoids are divided into two other parts. Vocoids could be syllabic like vowels, and vocoids could be non-syllabic like glides. So glides are not syllabic. It means that they cannot actually function as the nucleus of the syllables. But here we can say vowels are syllabic because they can function as the nucleus of the syllables. So here contoid again are divided. So the entire contoid sounds, laterals, nasal, and R varieties and abstovans. They can be divided into two other categories. Some of them could be syllabic, means that they can be used to work as, for example, vowels. Specifically here we have laterals, for example, L, nasals, na or ma sometimes, and some variety. They can function as syllabic sounds. It means that they can stand as the nuclei of certain syllables. Here, non-syllabic contoids are, for example, abstovans, as we had for plosives, for affricates, and for fricatives. They are basically non-syllabic contoid sounds. So see here, this vocoid and this contoid. Again, under each one we have got two perspectives, syllabic vowels and then non-syllabic. So this is quite a kind of phonological facts. But above, when we are dividing, for example, the entire sounds into vocoid and contoid, so that we said vowels and glides and then laterals, nasals, or varieties in abstractions, this was kind of pure phonetic or physical properties through which we looked at certain sounds that we had in English language. So down here, vowels and consonants phonological terms. Generally, vowels are syllabic vocoids, all right? As we have seen, they are right. So vowels are syllabic means that vowels are of the category of vocoids and they are syllabic. Vocoids are those sounds that phonetically and physically they are produced without any construction. In syllabic means that are those sounds that they can serve as the nuclei of the syllables. Thus, of the vocoids above, E and A could be vowels, but Ya and Va would not. See, Ya and Va, because again we say that vocoids could be non-syllabic as well. So generally vocoids are syllabic, right? But some of the vocoid sounds could be non-syllabic. Ya and Va, they are not syllabic. They are functioning as consonants. And consonants are contoids which function as syllable margins, means that they are either functioning as onsets or codas of certain syllables, like pa, ba, and sometimes la also, and in words like lip, yes. This la is not functioning as a syllabic letter. So this la is basically occurring in the position of an onset, which is the exact position for a consonant sound. So lip, lot, but not the final segment in little. So here this la is different from this la. So that is why I have written here sometimes la can function as a syllabic sound. So questions. What is the difference between vocoid and contoid? Or describe vocoid versus contoid in your opinion. So you have to exactly look for the answer for vocoid or the distinction between vocoid and contoid. And then, what do you mean by syllabic and non-syllabic sounds? Next, sonorant versus obstruent. So how sonorant and obstruent sounds are different. And do you have any other questions concerning this? Okay. Now we are coming to two other concepts or parameters based on which we further categorize speech sounds, specifically English. So the two parameters are Furtis and Lenis. So here the author says in linguistics, the Latin words fortis and lenis stand for the words strong. Fortis means strong, and lenis means weak, sometimes identified with tense and lax. Maybe in some, for example, other books, instead of strong, we may have the word tense, and instead of the word weak, we may have the word lax. So they are the same, or they convey the same idea. Now we stick to the definition of the two terminologies here. So fortis, consonants which are pronounced with relatively greater energy is called fortis. So what it means? If we are producing or articulating fortis sounds, so we need to spend much more energy while we are producing a particular sound. So English has fortis consonants such as pa, pa, and pat, with a corresponding Lenis consonant such as ba and bat. So here, pa is basically fortis. It means that when we are producing pa, so we are using strong muscular energy. Pa. And then when we are producing ba, it means that we actually spend less energy or we spend less muscular effort when we are producing, for example, the sound ba. So we have pa and then we have ba. Pat, bat. So we are producing two different sounds that in terms of the amount of energy that is spent in the production of the two sounds, they are different. While we are producing pa, we spend much more muscular effort, which means we are spending much more energy than the production of ba. When we are producing ba, we spend less muscular energy or effort. So here, consonants produced with lesser muscular energy is called lenis. Then any sound which is produced with lesser amount of, for example, energy or muscular effort, we can say that is a lenis sound. So studies have shown that articulatory strength in oral pressure and the production of fortis and lenis sounds are relevant. So what the authors is trying to tell us is there is not any difference between fortis and lenis sounds. So the only difference that we can notice is while we are producing them, and for fortis sounds we are producing much more energy, but for lenis we are producing much less energy and muscular effort. So the articulators in the mouth can move with a greater velocity with fortis consonant than with linear sound ones or linear sounds. Yes. So it means that when we are producing fortis sounds, we use much more velocity. So specifically our tongue is, for example, moving from one side to another, or maybe some other organs are, while they are involved in the production of particular sounds, they spend more energy than the amount of energy spent for linear sounds. For example, voiceless stops generally have greater oral pressure than voiced ones, right? But one thing, for the time being, I think it is not clear to you and you're not familiar with the concept of voicing, whether a sound is voiced or voiceless. So in the future, we will be talking about the two other concepts, which are voiceless and voiced. So what sounds are voiced and what sounds are voiceless. But today, we can simply say, when we are producing voiced sounds, so we are basically spending less muscular energy. Or we are, for example, spending less energy. So when we are producing voiced sounds, in which we are producing, for example, less amount of energy, they are called lenis. So simply we can say all voiceless sounds in English are lenis. Means that in the production we spend less energy. However, when we are producing voiceless sounds for the production of which we need to spend a lot of muscular effort or a lot of energy, so they are called fortis. So we can say voiceless sounds are fortis, which means that we need to spend more energy. However, voiced sounds are lenis, for the production of which we spend less amount of energy. So thus, voiced sounds are normally lenis. That is what I told you. Voiced sounds are normally lenis because we spend less amount of energy for voiced sounds. Right. However, while we are producing voiceless consonants, we are spending more energy and we, for example, employ strong muscular effort. So they are what? They are fortis. Furthermore, fortis and lenis were coined for language where the contrast between sounds such as pa and ba does not involve voicing. Right. In English, pa and ba are different. We can say the only difference between pa and ba is this, that pa is voiceless and ba is voiced. But in certain other languages, so maybe speakers or native speakers cannot distinguish or contrast between pa and ba in terms of voicing. Maybe probably both are either voiced or voiceless. So the only distinction between the two is with these two parameters. So whether pa that they are producing is fortis or lenis. Or, for example, bad they are producing is either it is produced in a fortis manner or in a lenis manner. So that fortis and lenis basically make a distinction between whether the sound that you're producing is pa and ba. So when pa and ba, depending upon being, for example, fortis fortis or lenis, they are producing or they are implying different meanings to us. So here, when we are talking just as a clue, we will be talking about voice. So we can say voiced sounds or do sounds. So when we are producing them, we feel or notice much more vibration in our vocal cords. However, when you're producing voiceless sounds, we notice basically less amount of vibration in our vocal cords. But you should be very much careful. You should never say that voiceless sounds or do sounds that they produce vibration. In voiceless sound, they do not produce or do not possess any vibration. So basically, we are talking about the extent of vibration. Right. When we are producing voice sounds, we feel much more vibration than the voiceless sounds in our vocal folds or in our vocal cords. So again, here you have got some questions for T's versus Lenny's. So how for T's and Lenny's sounds are different? So how for T's and voiceless sounds are, for example, similar or different? And then Lenny's versus voiced. So voiced is another name for Lenny's. But of course they are different. When we are, for example, using Lenny's sounds, we mean one thing. When we, for example, use voice sounds, we mean another thing. So we are talking about two different properties of the same category. And if you have any other questions, so please let me know and drop me a message concerning any question that you have. So this is your assignment. List the number of phonemes in your language. No problem. Whether you are Persian native speaker, whether you are, for example, Pashto native speakers, and then you have to write the number of phonemes that you have in your language. Next, classify them on the basis of these parameters. Air-stem mechanism. So generally they are pulmonic. I'm going to actually give you a hint there. So the entire air-stem mechanisms or mechanism used in the production of speech sounds and Pashto in Dari, they are actually pulmonic air-stem mechanism. They are using pulmonic air-stem mechanism. Then you have to write the number of vowels and consonants that you know in your language. And then the type of structure. Okay, affricate, fricate, for example, open approximation, close approximation, intermittent, and then partial approximation, and etc. Talk about obstruents. You have to identify the entire obstruent sounds, like, for example, pay, pay, and then we have also bay and che. We have, and then you have to go for plosive, fricatives, affricates. And then sonorant sounds, those sounds during the production of which you do not make any constriction in your actually vocal tract. And then you have to pick out how many nasal sounds are present in your language and how many lateral sounds, glides, and trill or flap ra actually exist in your language. And then deadline may, no, that is not the deadline. So the deadline is when we physically actually meet each other. So I'm just evaluating the entire thing. Okay, guys, so thank you very much. Wish you all the best. So if you have any question, then I'm here to actually help you. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best, guys. See you. Bye bye.